We
Short
doing
time.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, we're live. We're live.
Showtime.
Hello,
Yeah, we're
welcome
live.
everybody. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of MRAdio, the most successful and only UK-based show on men's rights, specifically on men's rights. Your
Sometimes.
hosts are your hosts are Philip Tynesor, that's me, founder of Gender Parity UK, and our always lovely anti-fembot Elizabeth Hobson.
Good evening, all. Oh, and Haku is here. Look.
Oh yeah,
He's lovely.
a bearded dragon, right?
He is a bearded dragon.
Awesome, awesome. I also have an animal hidden in this frame, and during the show you can try to find it.
Well, it's not head lice, is it?
Clothes. It's probably moths. I'm pretty sure I have moths somewhere flying around here. Yeah. So if you see it, please give me a shout so I can snap it out of its miserable life. Cheers.
Cheers.
No, honestly, I love all animals, but I have animal skins animal rugs hanging around everywhere, and they especially go into the ones that I cured myself. So it's really annoying. I constantly have to keep putting them into the freezer to kill the larvae. So yeah. So we've got two viewers. So we should probably start. Feel free to leave comments in our comment section. Hi, Stephen. Good to see you.
Hi, Stephen.
Our number one fan.
Number one.
Is that our number one or our only fan? Are we on OnlyFans? Okay, so we've got 4 juicy stories for you. Well, some more juicy than others. Lots of depressing stuff. One good news. So let's dive right into it. Let me have a look. So we're gonna start with a white pill. Good news from an article from the Men's Health Forum. Just gonna read some of this out. The forum welcomes MP's new inquiry into men's health. The forum has welcomed the decision by MPs to launch an inquiry in men's mental and physical health. 6 areas of inquiry. As part of our campaign for a men's health strategy, the forum been working on ways to get men's health up the agenda. Winchester MP Steve Brine, who chairs the Health and Social Care Committee, have been part of this, and we were delighted to see our work highlighted in the committee's call. The inquiry is asking for evidence in 6 areas. Number 1, what factors drive lower and falling male life expectancy, and what action would have the biggest impact on addressing this? Number 2, what is known about why men have a higher risk of dying from cancer, and how can this risk be reduced? Subpoint A, what action is needed to improve early detection of cancer specific to men, for example, around awareness of symptoms, issues with screening, and encouraging men to come forward? Subpoint B, with nearly 500,000 men living with or after prostate cancer, how well does aftercare support ongoing symptoms of male-specific cancers, and how could this be improved? Point number 3, or question 3. What is driving higher rates of suicide amongst men, and how could this be addressed? Question 4. What factors contribute to men using health services, like general practice, less often than women, And what impact does this have on men's health outcomes, for example, for cardiovascular disease? Question 5. What role do community and sport-based projects play in reaching men at higher risk of isolation or poor mental health, and how can it be ensured that this support is spread equitably across the country? And question number 6. What are the challenges in delivering health equity across different population groups amongst men, and how best can they be addressed? So, and they continue saying, this new inquiry is a hugely positive step forward. Make sure you let our elected representatives know what you think. We hope the next stop is a men's health strategy, which obviously is amazing news, really, really great news. And congratulations to the Men's Health Forum. And I would assume that in parts, the APPG on men's issues probably had some impact on that as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. What are your thoughts?
Who was the named MP at the top?
Was it from Winchester? Just let me have a look. Winchester MP Steve Brine.
Interesting. Steve.
To be honest, I had never heard of him.
No, I haven't. That's why it's interesting. Like, who's that guy?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's a great step forward.
Yeah, necessary, not sufficient. It's an opportunity, and hopefully it will be useful. But this is
in the description of this video. In the description of this video, we're gonna have a link to this website. Please click on the inquiry and fill it out. So you don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be an organization, you can just have your voices heard. And obviously, the more people submit their views, the better, so that they see that it's actually an important topic. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much what I was going to say, because that was what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, weren't we, with the calls for submissions. And yeah, there is a huge amount of room for improvement. And so yeah, let's just hope that there is some level of actually listening and acting on the findings.
Yes. When you look at the questions that are asked here and the focuses, do you think they got it right? Is there anything that really stands out to you? Is there something that you think is missing?
Oh, from a men's health strategy.
Yeah.
Let me enlarge the screen so I can read through it again.
Our listeners might be also interested if our listeners, if they had certain comments. So if you have some comments, please just put them into the comment section. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, they're quite broad, and so they are, they can cover an awful lot just under those. I think one thing that does bear considering is the potential impacts, the potential health impacts of, the way our society is going, the fact that, jobs are increasingly being automated. I think that Alex Jones may well be right about another lockdown. To be honest, regardless of whether it's virus related, there've been calls for lockdowns for climate change, and I'm expecting fake aliens any minute, So I think it's some kind of, you know, in a rapidly changing world, what do you think the, you know, coming challenges will be for men? Because I mean, there'll be challenges for women too, but particularly men, because men are more work-centered, or more men are work-centered as compared to women, and it also, you know, men not earning is more likely to put a greater strain on relationships than women not earning. And so, yeah, I think it would be prudent to be concerned about the future, but then the you know, the present's pretty awful, so maybe we should just start here.
Do you think so? We from Gender Parity UK, I created the first draft of our response. Now I'm waiting for some feedback of our members to submit it, and some of the points that you just mentioned I have not addressed yet, but actually I find your points very good. But there's this question: if whoever reads this report, if they are ready to hear some uncomfortable truths. And I mean, in these questions, they already use the term equitable. And it's like red flag. The question is...
Oh, it's so annoying though. You know, like, I really hate the way language has been like usurped. You know, like when we were having that conversation about Jonah Hill and his therapy talk, and it's like, you know, I mean, that's a lesser example because therapy talk is a bit lame, however you cut it. But like words like equitable, like that is a perfectly correct word to use in the context of this article here. But it does make you cringe, doesn't it? You can't help but cringe when you hear it.
Exactly. So I think there are certain gendered aspects in regards to men's health, where you actually have to look at the role of man in society and what men need to feel fulfilled, and some of these are not in line with the current view that men and women are practically the same. They should do the same jobs and all of that. Obviously, the woman is just as likely to be the provider for the family. All these things, all these false assumptions, I'm not sure if whoever responds to this inquiry, or whoever reads the responses to the inquiry, I don't know if they are ready to actually hear the truth. So from Gender Parity UK, we're gonna be quite careful. I definitely did
if you're writing on behalf of an organization, I think it's prudent to be politically, you know,
balanced,
a bit safer. But
we do mention that, for example, collapse of family and growing up without a father obviously has a negative impact, and that these things have to be addressed. So we did mention that in our response. If you're interested, I can send you the response and you can have a read. It's not very long. It's about 1,000 words at the moment.
Yeah, of course. But yes, I mean, you know, we of course can all take a leaf out of Joe Biden's book and take a load of synonyms, and then we can enter as loads of different people. And then we can point at them and go, God, they're like really misogynistic, aren't they? That person, but it's really like just me in a hat with a different name.
Yeah, do it like Clark Kent, just put on a pair of glasses, or take off your glasses.
My glasses.
Yeah, take off your glasses, exactly. Superwoman, Wonder Woman. So to our viewers, got a question, and it would be nice if you could write a comment. Which area do you think is most important in regards to men's health? Do you think men's mental health is more important? Men's health is one of the most important focuses, for example, suicide. Are there any things that you guys think are most important? Please leave a comment. And while we're waiting,
actually, like veterans, the welfare of veterans, I think, should be particularly addressed. We've, along with certainly every Western government, probably every government, realistically, like, it is disgraceful. We've got a history of just treating our veterans disgracefully, and it's so unacceptable. So I would like to see a focus on that, actually. Although saying that, I mean, there are excellent charities like the Royal British Legion, and all of them do such a good job, and it's like the government don't do things well. You know what I mean?
Though I was not
any input from the government is not gonna help.
Though I was in the German military for 3 years, I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve abroad. I didn't have any combat experience. Nothing traumatic, that's for sure. So I can't really voice an opinion on that. I wonder what the best approach from the government in regards to veterans would actually be, because, and I think
we know what it's not.
Pardon?
We know what it's not. So, the government has a record of refusing to accept responsibility for harm that their orders have inflicted on soldiers. And so it goes back to World War II, when the generals were insisting that they released mustard gas when the wind was blowing it back into their faces, and then they all came with and like, now you get these guys coming home with PTSD, and still, the government are like, just mental, guys, just mental, and so.
But the question
needs to happen.
The problem is that you take people from normal life and put them into a life-altering situation, into a place where that is way more real, where it's about life and death, not about what kind of shoes you're buying next. And then you bring them back into a life where problems are small and everything probably feels relatively insignificant, and nobody can understand you. So in some ways, I don't know how people can be brought back into a society that doesn't understand them. So realistically speaking, there almost needs to be a subset of society, a secret club where they can just go and be themselves. But how can you live like that? I think the big problem.
I'll be honest. There is like a subversive reason why I'd like the government to start taking responsibility for the harm they inflict on our soldiers, which is that if they had to take responsibility, I think maybe they'd stop putting them into these situations so much.
Yeah. Which actually is a good question, and we're going a little bit off topic, but I actually do think that is fascinating. So I don't want women in the military. Though I was in the military and I served with some very capable women that I vehemently defended as equal comrades, and I really mean that. So biggest respect to them. But overall, I would say that I think exclusively male military is better than a mixed one for several reasons, and it has nothing to do with misogyny or something. It's just mostly from practical reasons and the reasons that men always have the drive to defend women. So we will
exactly. That's the thing. It's like with this issue, like the real crux of the problem with it, if you had to say it's prejudiced against a sex, it's prejudiced against men. Because you know, the fact is, regardless of the performance of these women, you know, it is vital that these men work as a team that are completely equal and regard everyone's life as being equally valuable. But as soon as you throw a woman in there, nature makes men prioritize her well-being.
Yeah, and I think the inverse is also the case. I think that women overall care less about the well-being of men, and I think because you could say that women shouldn't be in the front line, but they can be in the planning stages. They can maybe make strategic decisions. But to be honest, I wouldn't want a woman to send me to war and make life and death decisions for me, because I I only want somebody to do that who's been in a similar situation and who can identify with me. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think there is a certain
Yeah.
coldness.
I would similarly not want a man who's always worked in an office making those decisions.
Yeah, and I think that there is a certain coldness and a lack of relatability between women when they send guys to war to die. It's like, oh yeah, it's their job, right? I'm sure it doesn't hurt them. And we're gonna go into that like dark side of women in a moment when we talk about the case of Lucy Letby. We're gonna talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to address some of the messages. Do you want to read them out, maybe?
Yeah. So Vernon, hello Vernon, reckons that men's mental health is the most sort of significant out of physical and mental health, because their physical health will follow from having good mental health. And I do concur with that. I've been watching a bit of Gabor Mate only this week. And yeah, it can really have a massive impact on health outcomes, your mental health.
And
sorry, Gabriel Foe is talking about helping men to find purpose being the best way to help. So this is post service. So retraining, maybe some kind of barracks or blue collar jobs, getting them a group of men they can bond with over tasks. But I mean, to be fair, the military actually offer excellent training that is like useful in the outside world. The problem is that I think there is some prejudice against veterans, like in when they start applying for jobs, and it's not related to whether they're competent or not. It's just a discomfort.
I would actually, to be honest, I would encourage companies that almost exclusively hire veterans or predominantly, because even if you get a job with other hardworking guys, if they can't share a similar experience, you can't actually express the trauma that you've experienced. And amongst veterans, I think there is a certain understanding. You can like when I was in the military, I could see it between guys that were actually in armed conflicts. They connected with each other differently, even though they were in different countries. They're like, oh, where were you? Oh, I was in that conflict. Oh, I was here. And they immediately bonded. They didn't really have to go deeper into the topic. And I was like, yeah, I'm out. Because I would always have to ask. I was like, how was it like? What did you experience? And it's a completely different view on things if you weren't there. So yeah, but thank you so much, Gabriel, and for saying that. And in regards to Vernon, I agree in regards to men's mental health, and I think that also goes hand in hand with um, having purpose and having a family, be it your own family or having very close friends. That massively improves man's mental health. We know, for example, that married men live longer than single men. So get married, guys. get a prenup.
It also is like suggestive of the holistic approach that is totally missing from most of our healthcare services.
But that's also the case for women.
In isolation.
But that's also the case for women.
It is also the case for women, yes. But you know, when we were talking about, you mentioned an idea like having like a bus that drives around and it's a hub that provides a variety of services. Because, you know, and it's not only about the fact that if you treat like one symptom in isolation, but there's a whole myriad actually going on, then it's not really going to help. But also just because men do, and you know, I absolutely am convinced that the major driving factor in men not seeking help from GPs and all of this is because they're working. You know, I feel like there's a lot of criticism that gets leveled at men that they don't go and get tested and all of this. But like, when I've had a heavy work schedule, I've not been able to get to the doctors regardless of how I felt, you know, and if I had concerns. And, you know, men are expected to earn enough to support their families and all of this. And so I think if we do need to find ways of making it incredibly time efficient and flexible.
Yeah, I would actually suggest that in like for big companies that they actually have, let's say, compulsory health checks, that once a year a doctor, maybe a GP, comes to the company. Yeah, I know. I feel the same way about it. But having a GP coming to the company, and you can just go there and get checked, and you don't lose money. You're not negatively affected. I think that's the big fear for men, is losing money, not being able to get time off of work. All of that definitely disincentivizes healthcare for men. Okay.
Yeah, no, I am uncomfortable because, you know, any big company doing that is going to slide in a load of, you know, test them for drugs, test them for wrong thing, you know, like do this, do that. So
yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes you need a certain amount of coercion to get men to do something. That's why, let's be honest, that's why sometimes women are nagging, because men are sometimes not great doing certain things, and sometimes we need to be reminded. By the way, it also goes the other way around. But in a relationship, sometimes we actually need our partner to kick our butt, to go to the doctor, or to do that thing that we were supposed to do. And I think sometimes it's necessary. Not always, of course. But
I've not particularly experienced that as a gendered phenomenon, but okay.
Well, women are more likely to go to the doctor, and
but I just think it's like it's an opportunity thing. Like, women have time off, and so they go, I'll make an appointment.
Nah, we really don't like to go. The thing is, going to the doctor is
Can we have a poll? Can we have a poll in the comments? Like, I swear to God, I think it's time. He thinks it's personality flaws.
But I'm a man, so I should know. it's just so typical for us, man, that something happens to us and we're like, nah, I'm fine. Like even if it's a deep cut with a lot of dirt in it, like I would just like put it under water, look at it, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably fine. I when I a couple of months ago, I sliced my thumb in half. Yeah, I put a tourniquet around it, and I had to drive 3 hours to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, there was an Aldi. And I went to the Aldi and I bought some super glue. And I was like, maybe I can just super glue it. And so I took the tourniquet off, and it was just blood coming out. I was like, okay, no, that's not super glue. But but it's just so typical for many men, maybe not all, but for many men, to shrug things off. I think it's more common than in women.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. Like, you know,
No,
if you're shrugging off stuff that is just a waste of time going to the hospital. And by the way, like if you're talking about cuts and stuff, they hardly ever even stitch things now. They use this glue and your scar's like lame. You're better off. You can get these like sticky stitches. They're like little strips of masking tape. They're really effective.
I know.
The scar.
No, I needed 12 stitches.
And besides, after hearing about Lucy Letby, I don't want to go in one of those places ever again.
That is very true. That is very true. Which is a wonderful segue. Thank you very much. Philip, you live in the middle of nowhere, so you don't have the time. Nah, I was driving down to church anyway, so cutting my thumb and going to church actually coincided really well with going to the hospital, so it was all good. But thanks, Stephen. Yeah, let's. Oh, somebody else is mentioning alt prop. Men's mental health begins with the child. That's where the gulf opens up. Girls are encouraged, boys are not. Their observations of this determines everything that comes later. I largely agree. Yeah, I think so. And I do think that sometimes girls could be taught a little bit more to man up or to not cry about everything. And I think men could be encouraged to ask for help more readily sometimes. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but Gabriel Foe also, it's kind of a similar point, really. He says that men do put it off more than women. It could be that more men are single and that we all need someone to reinforce that we're cared for and are needed.
Yeah, I think, for example, fathers.
When you're in that mental space where you feel like you're worthless and useless and a waste of oxygen, it can be hard to get your ass motivated to go and seek some kind of
and when you're responsible, I mean, I'm a dad now. I'm like, oh, I have to look after my health. And it even like doing sport. I'm doing more sport because I mean, my daughter was just born, and I'm like, in 15 years, I'm 60, and I still want to be able to do some sport with her or run around or climb a mountain with the kids. So I better look after my health. So yeah, having responsibility definitely helps you looking after yourself. Okay, let's go to some brutal women.
Dude, can I just make an observation?
Of course.
Well, we've got like 4 fairly significant articles to discuss, items to discuss, and it's been 35 minutes already. I know. I'm gonna cut at least one of the topics out. It's fine, because I haven't one of them I haven't prepared very well, so we're gonna skip it till next week. If that's okay. I think by now everybody should be aware of the case of Lucy Letby, the now notorious baby murderer who was just convicted. I'm going to read a little bit for those who might not be well informed, especially the ones that are not from the UK. I read from People magazine or people.com.
Lucy Letby trial. What to know about the nurse convicted of murdering 7 infants in UK hospital. It's a case almost too terrible to be real. Nurse Lucy Letby had been convicted of murdering 7 infants and attempting to murder 6 others as a neonatal in Cheshire, England. She was sentenced to life in prison and is considered one of the most prolific child killers in United Kingdom history. Letby was found guilty of killing 7 infants, 5 boys and 2 girls, while they were in her care in a neonatal unit in Chester Hospital in 2015 and 2016. Blah, blah, blah. In one instance of attempted murder, Letby tried to murder an infant referred to as Child G, while the baby's assigned nurse was on break. Under Letby's care, expert witness Dr. Devi Evans testified the baby received far more milk than prescribed and that the overfeeding couldn't have been an accident, but was an intent to harm, per the BBC. That baby survived, but 7 others did not. Letby pleaded not guilty to all 22 charges. The prosecution presented handwritten notes found in Letby's home, in which she describes herself as a horrible, evil person and says she killed them on purpose. But other notes purportedly proclaimed her innocence. I haven't done anything wrong, and they have no evidence, so why have I had to hide away? The notes read. And so on and so forth. I saw a tweet by one of our friends. Just a second, I'm going to put up the tweet. And I wanted to talk about the question in the tweet. So, from House Bunny, F House Bunny, at Men's Rights Bunny, shout out to you. Her question was, for research, please may I have all your views on Lucy Letby, the baby killer. More, how she got away with it and why. Any thoughts you may have. Thank you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
on the whole topic.
I was watching one of the pediatricians who spent a year with his colleagues, like the pediatric surgeons and that, raising concerns that they thought she was the common denominator in all of these excess deaths that were unusual and unexplainable by any sort of metric, because they were all expecting the babies to go home. And he said that the management just were not acting. They kind of did some internal reviews and didn't make any conclusions. The pediatric surgeons in the end said, we are not working with her, get her off the unit. And so they finally moved her to a desk job, but it still took another year before the pediatric surgeons were able and the consultants were able to pressure the management to get the police involved. So, and I mean, he said take the proper action. So I would not really want to make too many assumptions, but you have to wonder what their priorities were, because you know, the people who would know were raising the concerns.
Yeah. Now I want to read out a few comments that were made under this post. And the comments read, After decades of feminist preaching that men commit literally all crime, the very idea of a woman doing something so evil is almost impossible to believe. Now imagine going to a manager and telling them you think this woman is murdering babies. Impossible. Happy Bun wrote, the more I read and watch things...
Yeah, to be fair, can I jump in?
You can, but
I wouldn't blame it on decades.
Yes, again.
I wouldn't blame it on decades of feminism necessarily. There's a good book by Patricia Pearson called When She Was Bad, where she documents...
We'll get into that because I want to read a couple of the comments that all go in the same direction, and I think we might actually are in agreement. But I want to read just a few more comments, and then we can talk about that. So other comments read, the more I read and watch things regarding her, I believe this case is a prime example of how much feminism has failed society and children. Here another one, nobody could believe a woman would do those terrible acts, so she got away with it. She also had a female boss. Feminism is an awful thing. So there are quite a few comments that reflect this sentiment, but I actually mostly disagree with that. And I think you wanted to say something similar. You mentioned a book.
Yeah, so When She Was Bad by Patricia Pearson is about women who kill. And yeah, women are significantly more likely to kill the vulnerable, basically. So, you know, whereas men go out and get into a fight with someone equally strong more often, women kill babies and they kill the elderly. But I mean, you know, the crime of infanticide was specifically invented because juries, when they were hearing trials about women who killed their babies, were unwilling to say they were guilty, knowing that a possible sentence for murder was the death penalty. And so that's why we have infanticide. It was brought in so that the sentence would be less, so that juries would be willing to say what they actually thought happened. And that was way before, you know, all of these decades of feminism, which have kind of, you know, they've spread that message about women being angels and men being beasts. Certainly, but I don't think we can specifically blame this on that. And to be honest, I think there is also just an element of unbelief, and I don't think it would be like gender or sex specific either. I think that it's unbelievable because the human response to seeing a vulnerable, like, newborn baby is a nurturing response, and so it is hard to imagine that any human being could do that.
I agree with you. I think that both in men and in women, we just assume, or let me phrase it a different way. It depends on how you come across. And as far as I know, she came across as likable and sweet and caring. So I would say that the darkness was well hidden, and you could have the same with a man. If who's very charming, everybody likes him, and then things happen, you would assume that it's maybe the grumpy guy that you don't like, the guy who's a little bit rough anyways, but you just don't assume that the sweet guy or the sweet woman are capable of something like that. That's why certain like sociopaths are really dangerous if they are able to hide, or narcissists why they're so dangerous when they can be quite sweet in some instances and devilish in other instances.
Yes, but it's very disturbing that the management knew they were, they had all of the warnings and they ignored them. It's very troubling. It's more likely they were motivated by not wanting to draw bad attention, negative attention, and thorough inquiries into what was going on and get a bad reputation. I think maybe there's reputation management going on there more than anything. I think that's more likely.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So that's a good point. I would blame it much more on lack of courage of the institutions than feminism. There is a certain aspect of conformity and let's not rock the boat, because if we reported, we could lose our jobs. We draw attention to, and to be honest, let's be honest, to some extent we would all do something like we would all downplay issues in certain areas. Let's say, okay, so I'm a hairdresser, and if somebody comes in with lice, you have to shut down your business for a substantial time. You have to clean everything, yeah? And if that person walks in and you look and you're like, shit, lice, you're like, okay, can I deal with this situation in a way that I don't have to lock down my shop? Can I just kick them out? Can I spray disinfectant everywhere? And would you tell all the clients that are in the shop just now? Would you say, oh, by the way, just to let you know, somebody just walked in with lice? That's the right thing to do, but that could destroy the reputation of your business. So while it's an awful thing that happened here, I also understand that it's part of human nature.
Well, it's part of human nature. What is not part of human nature is doing it to the degree that they did it. However, if the culture is a culture of cover up, and I've worked in the health sector and I've seen how the NHS works, and it is a culture of cover up, then you could get to the point where you are so used to covering up that you could cover up something as egregious as this.
Exactly. But even in the German, when I was in the military, I was a medic and I was working in a hospital for a short time, and I saw how they pretty much killed an elderly lady by malpractice, and I was really, she was already dead. I didn't even know, I wouldn't have known where to report, what to say. And I was like, oh my God, they just killed this woman by, well, not this. And I was like, so is that the healthcare system? So I'm pretty sure it's not just the UK. Some of that will be everywhere. Yeah, unfortunately. So don't get sick, everybody. Okay, we've got another 12 minutes. I think we can look at one more story. The story that I'm not looking at, and I'm gonna do a little bit more research till next week, is about Scotland. So in Scotland, they want to. It's insane. God, I hate Scotland so much. In some ways,
Political are the worst, man. Whenever someone in the SNP stands up in the House of Commons, like, I preemptively cringe.
It's absolutely insane. Let me. We're not going to cover it, but I want to at least show the document that we're going to talk about next week as a little preview.
Spoiler.
God, I hate that stuff so much. So it's from the Scottish government, Women's Justice Leadership Panel. So the Women's Justice Leadership Panel, these are 8 raging harpies that wrote this paper on why we need why we need an intersectional and gendered lens on justice. And so women need a different approach to justice from men. And overall, it's reducing sentences for female perpetrators because they are victims.
More?
And yeah, even more. Because, and they are actually writing in this thing that you cannot distinguish between a female perpetrator and a victim. They are the same.
You can say the exact same thing about men. You know,
absolutely.
Find me a man who's incarcerated who doesn't have adverse childhood experiences.
I know. I think everybody knows everything that applies to women does apply in one way.
I am much closer to the bleeding heart end of the criminal justice approach spectrum. I really am. But it really winds me up when they gender the discussion. It's not appropriate.
I mean, 95% of the incarcerated are men, so should we not look at their mental health and their trauma as well? I mean, that's ridiculous. The argument for feminists why we focus more on female victims of domestic abuse is because they're the majority. So because they're the majority by 65% official numbers, we need to give them 99% of support. Yeah? But even though men are 95% of the prison population, we need to give all the support to the 5% that are women. It's absolutely ridiculous. But let's focus on that next week. The last story that we're looking at.
I was a little bit surprised that Lucy Letby's sentence is that it's proper life. Actual life. I didn't even know we had actual life in the UK. I thought it was they get life, but they'll be out whenever. Although saying that,
I'm not
suspect
surprised
her life
because I
not
think
be very long.
Depending on,
because, child murderers don't get on very well in prison.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that women that kill their children, apart from abortion, unless the media plays the mental health card, people have a very visceral reaction to female child
even when they do the mental health card. If you go into a women's prison, and it's the same with men, men who harm children that go into men's prisons, there is no defense, and you're in a population of people who've had probably worse experiences than you who have harmed a child. That ain't gonna wash. Your days good.
Yeah. Okay, last story. We have a couple of minutes left.
Sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. No, it's absolutely fine. So the last story is an article that was written by a friend of ours, Neil Linden. Do you want to introduce the story?
Yeah, sure. So he has written this to, is it Baroness Hale or something, who's doing an inquiry into the Hallett, an inquiry into whether the government response to COVID was efficient and proportionate for what it's worth, which I tend to suspect will be very little. But Neil is challenging her to look into the huge windfall that the lockdown represented for women's domestic violence charities, who kept going on about this tsunami of domestic abuse that was apparently happening. And, you know, there were all these women MPs and our Prime Minister for a while parroting that there's a tsunami and that the murder rate has doubled, like there are double the number of women being killed by their partners because of lockdown. And so Neil did a lot of freedom of information requests and found that that is not reflected in the police statistics. The murder rate in particular actually fell during lockdown in like domestic homicides. So where did that money go? Can we ask about that? He doesn't think that she will, Baroness Hallett.
That she will not answer or respond to that. Yeah, I obviously I agree with that. The likelihood that she will answer, I think, is very, very small, near nil. But yeah, two things. It was obviously a grift. That was obvious, even when Women's Aid and Refuge, when they said, "Oh, there will be a tsunami coming," they called it the perfect storm and all of that. It was like, oh yeah, it's just the next grift. When Sarah Everhart died, it was another grift. They're just grifters. It's absolutely disgusting. No matter what tragedy happens, they will grift on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously have no issue with services being properly funded for people who need them. But the fact is that, like, if you look at Refuge, for example, they've got funding from the government that would cover the services they provide. They've also got like private wealthy donors, and the funding they receive from them would cover the service they provide. And then they've also got like little donations from people, which would also cover the service because there's so many of them. And if you look at the services they provide, it's troubling. Like, the money is not going to the women who they purport to help.
Well, the CEO of Refuge. The CEO of Refuge, I think it's Refuge, not Women's Aid, received more money than the Prime Minister. So that's their salary. It's absolutely ridiculous.
He's a philanthropist who is only concerned about these poor women, these poor battered women, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's not a grift at all. It's not a grift at all. But would you say, like when I read the numbers, when I saw that there was no increase, actually a decrease in domestic abuse cases, were you not surprised? Because, to be honest, I was slightly surprised about that.
Well, so there was a 3.5% rise in convictions. I think it was either convictions or prosecutions. I think it was convictions for like domestic abuse. And what that reflects, you know, is not entirely clear, but the decrease was in deaths. So that certainly suggests that significant violence was less common. I think Neil made a good point when he said that, well, yeah, people are not going out to pubs and clubs and getting hammered and misconstruing or indeed seeing each other actually flirt or whatever with other people. And so that's a big reason for aggro to not kick off.
There would have been less cheating.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just clearly not what they said. It's not what they said. They lied, and it's like all over the Hansard record is the problem. That bothers me a lot. You know, right now, the historical record is gonna record that there was a tsunami of like this increase in domestic abuse. That's what's in all of the media. It was in our House of Commons and House of Lords.
Well, it's the same
out there for the record.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So in the House of Lords, they're debating currently the online safety bill or online harms bill, and in the House of Lords, they repeatedly repeated the claim that women are 27 times more likely to be harassed online, when in reality, men actually receive more online abuse than women. And
What?
that claim is false. Like Gender Parity UK, we wrote to the Office of Statistics and had them fact check the claim, and they said, yeah, it's a false claim. That claim should not be used, but it was used by lobby organizations. And there's an organization or a website specifically created to influence the online harms bill. And on that website, they make this 27 times claim. We wrote to these baronesses that shared this misinformation. We didn't even hear back. We heard no response. So today I sent an email to the Lord and to the MP who are sponsoring the bill, saying these false claims were made. There's one more debate in the House of the Lords. Could you please retract these claims and actually set the records straight? Here is the comment from the Office of Statistics. But similar to the article of Neil Linden, will they actually react to it? Will they do what's right? It's unlikely, and unfortunately, they can get away with it. There are certain, like, we can try to hold them accountable, but in the end, as you said, it's in the Hansard that, like, it will not be retracted, and that's the sad truth. It's a little bit like in 1984, but they don't even have to go back into articles and change them because they were wrong from the get-go.
Yeah, quite.
So we made it through 3 of our stories. Dear viewers, we hope you found the topics tonight informative. Please share the video. Tune in next week. That would be lovely. Anything else you want to say, Elizabeth?
No, I'm all good.
Would you like to end our session with a little prayer?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll hand over to St. Thomas Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
O Lord, my God, grant me minds to know you, a heart to seek you, wisdom to find you, faithful perseverance in waiting for you, and a hope of finally embracing you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And see you all again next week, Thursday at 9 o'clock UK time. Have a good night.